never imagined the person I trusted most would be the one to betray me in the place I felt safest, my own home. That night began like any other, and by the time it ended, every belief I had about loyalty, friendship, and love lay in pieces, betrayed in our own bed. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, whispering to myself as I replayed every smile, every glance I'd foolishly ignored. My name is Ethan, and for 7 years I believed my marriage to Lisa was unbreakable. She was beautiful, smart, kind, the partner I trusted with everything, including my heart. Our house had always been a sanctuary, a refuge after long days. I learned the hard way that sanctuary can be an illusion, and the people who make it feel safe are sometimes the ones who tear it apart. It began with small changes. Lisa grew distant, distracted, less affectionate. I told myself she was tired or stressed from work. Then the small things started to add up: extra time on her phone, hushed calls, the way she stiffened when Mark texted. Mark had been our friend for years. I considered him family. Still, the warning signs stacked up like flags in a gathering storm. One evening, I came home early to surprise her with dinner, wanting to reconnect and show I noticed that I cared. Instead, I walked into a scene that froze me. Lisa and Mark were together in our bedroom, laughing and close, utterly indifferent to my presence. The betrayal didn't just cut, it detonated, shattering the foundation of trust I had built my life on. I didn't react. Years of composure, planning, and patience kicked in. My mind cataloged every detail, noting actions, calculating a measured response. This wasn't about a moment of blind rage. It was about clarity and reclaiming control over a life that had been invaded by deceit. I decided I wouldn't confront them immediately. I moved through the house like a ghost, observing. I watched their interactions, recorded the stolen glances, the casual touches, the private jokes that now felt like knives. I let them reveal themselves in their own arrogance, knowing the truth, once fully exposed, would hit harder than any confrontation I could stage. I began documenting everything: photos, messages, timestamps, small details that when pieced together formed an undeniable picture of betrayal. Handling conflict logically had always been my way. This was no different. I wasn't driven by fury alone, but by the need for justice and the necessity of regaining control. Their behavior shifted as my evidence accumulated. Even unaware I was watching, Lisa grew cautious and guarded. Her attempts at secrecy only confirmed what I already suspected. Guilt is its own language, louder than any denial. Every laugh that rang too loudly, every hurried glance at her phone, every excuse to stay late at work, they all read like pages in a story she hoped I wouldn't read. But I had become fluent in that language. One night, pretending to sleep, I overheard them in the living room. Mark's voice too intimate, Lisa's laugh too easy. My chest tightened with rage and disbelief, but I didn't let it consume me. I tightened my plan. I would expose them at a moment designed to leave no room for denial. I rehearsed the confrontation in my head. Every word, every pause, every reaction. By the end of the week the evidence was complete. The timeline, the messages, the photos, everything documented meticulously. I was ready. The night I chose to act came wrapped in ordinary calm, the kind of stillness that makes chaos hit harder. I waited until Mark had left, then confronted Lisa directly. Her face moved from casual surprise to panic when she realized I knew. I didn't shout or plead. I let silence carry the weight. "I've seen everything," I said, voice steady but heavy. "Every message, every lie. Do you have anything to say?" Her eyes filled with tears, but guilt mixed with arrogance lingered behind them. "It's complicated," she stammered, and I cut her off. "Complicated? You betrayed the man you vowed to love and respect. That's not complicated." I stepped closer, letting my words land. "You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. Mark is equally responsible. I'm not here for excuses. I'm here to reclaim my life." Fear proved more powerful than my anger. I didn't need to escalate. The evidence did the work. One after another I laid out the facts, the texts, the photos, the timestamps, leaving no space for evasion. Arrogance and secrecy dissolved under the weight of truth. Lisa's tears came then, genuine and unguarded, but it was too late. The betrayal was revealed, the power shifted, and I reclaimed the narrative of my life. Leaving the house that night, I didn't feel triumphant in any shallow way. I felt clarity and resolution. Betrayal cuts deep, but confronting it with calm precision can turn the wound into a weapon of truth. I didn't simply survive their deceit. I turned it into a reckoning they wouldn't forget. The bed that had been tainted would remain a memory, a lesson etched into the walls of our home. But for me, it became more than revenge, it was reclamation. In reclaiming my life, I found not vengeance, but the strength and clarity to move forward, unbroken and unafraid of whatever comes next. After that night, the house that once felt like a sanctuary became nothing more than walls filled with echoes of betrayal. I didn't return right away. I stayed at a small hotel, quiet and detached, allowing myself to think clearly without the weight of her presence. Lisa called me countless times, her voice trembling through voicemails that shifted between apologies, excuses, and desperate pleas for me to come home. But I didn't answer. Silence was my weapon, and I wielded it carefully. Mark tried as well, sending messages dripping with fake concern, pretending to care about how I felt. He wanted me to believe this was some kind of mistake, a lapse in judgment. But the truth was carved into every detail I had recorded. Their betrayal hadn't been a single reckless night, it was a pattern, a choice made over and over again. That knowledge burned deeper than any words could. In those days away, I focused on rebuilding myself. I spoke to a lawyer, not for vengeance, but for liberation. Every document, every proof I had gathered became more than evidence of their betrayal. It became the blueprint for my freedom. The attorney looked over the files I'd meticulously kept and shook his head slowly. "You've built a case so strong," he said. "They won't be able to twist it. Not in any courtroom. Not in any negotiation." For the first time since discovering the truth, I felt control settling firmly in my hands. Lisa's desperation grew with every passing day. Flowers at the hotel desk, handwritten notes slipped under my door, emails spilling out with promises to change, to explain, to beg me for just one more chance. But what she never seemed to realize was that I wasn't waiting for her words. I wasn't waiting for her to admit what I already knew. I had no need for explanations when the truth was carved into my memory like scars on stone. Mark, on the other hand, avoided me entirely. The man who had once sat across from me at family dinners, who had toasted beside me at anniversaries, now vanished into the shadows of his own cowardice. His silence screamed louder than any apology ever could. It told me he knew exactly what he had done, and he knew that I was no longer the man who would forgive it. When I finally returned to the house, it wasn't to reconcile. It was to reclaim. I walked through the front door with calm purpose, not as a husband coming home, but as a man taking back what was his. Lisa stood there, her face pale, eyes swollen from tears. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand to silence her. Words no longer mattered. I placed the divorce papers on the table, the evidence attached neatly, undeniable in its clarity. "This," I said, my voice steady, "isn't just an ending. It's the truth written down in black and white. You can deny it to yourself, but you can't deny it here." Her hands trembled as she reached for the papers, her lips parting with the beginnings of protest. I didn't stay to hear them. I turned, walked out, and this time I didn't look back. As I stepped outside, the air hit different. It wasn't just cool night air this time, it was freedom. The life I thought I had, the love I thought was unbreakable, had been exposed as fragile glass. But in its shattering, I found something stronger. Myself. The reckoning wasn't just about exposing betrayal. It was about transformation. About rising from the ashes of deceit, sharper, clearer, untouchable. Lisa and Mark could live in the ruins of their choices. I would walk forward, carrying not their weight, but the strength of my survival. And that night, as I left behind the walls that once betrayed me, I realized the truth. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's walking away unbroken, with the power of never being fooled again. Months passed, and with them, the sharp edges of betrayal dulled into scars that no longer bled but still told their story. At first, the silence after leaving Lisa felt unbearable, like walking through an empty house with echoes that refused to die. But slowly, that silence became something else, peace. It was in those quiet moments that I rediscovered pieces of myself I had buried under the weight of a broken marriage. I began new routines, early morning runs, not to escape my thoughts, but to chase clarity, journaling late at night, pouring out the weight of my anger and slowly replacing it with purpose. Therapy became a lifeline, not because I was weak, but because strength isn't about denying wounds, it's about healing them. And with every session, I grew lighter, clearer, more certain of who I was without Lisa, without Mark, without deceit in my life. The people around me began to notice. Friends who had watched me suffer in silence now saw something different in my eyes. Not bitterness, not defeat, but a quiet fire. "You look different, Ethan," one of them said over coffee. "Like you finally know who you are." And they were right. For years, I had defined myself by the stability of my marriage, by the illusion of sanctuary. Now I was defining myself by something no one could take from me. Resilience. Opportunities followed. At work, I excelled in ways I hadn't before. unshackled from constant suspicion and emotional exhaustion. I was promoted, not just because of my skills, but because I carried myself differently now, with conviction. With a calm confidence born from surviving the worst. In my personal life, I reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with, surrounding myself with people who valued honesty, loyalty, and respect. Lisa and Mark faded into the background. I heard whispers that their affair hadn't lasted long once the weight of exposure crashed down on them. Betrayal may have brought them together, but guilt and mistrust tore them apart. I didn't smile when I heard it. I didn't feel pity either. I felt nothing, because by then, their story no longer mattered. I had moved on from being the man defined by what they did to me. The real turning point came one evening. Standing on my apartment balcony overlooking the city, the air was cool, the streets alive below, and for the first time in a long time, I felt gratitude. Gratitude not for what happened, but for what it taught me. Betrayal had been my crucible, burning away illusions, leaving behind only truth and strength. I realized then that the greatest power isn't in revenge, nor in proving others wrong. It's in proving yourself right, in knowing you can survive the unimaginable and still stand tall. Lisa and Mark had tried to break me in the most intimate way possible, but in the end, all they did was forge a stronger version of me. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a man broken by betrayal. I see a man reborn from it. A man who walked through the fire and came out not just standing, but unshakable. My story isn't about them anymore. It's about the freedom I found, the strength I reclaimed, and the life I built, one where trust, love, and loyalty aren't illusions, but choices I guard carefully, and never take for granted. And as the city lights flickered in the distance, I whispered to myself the truth I had earned. Betrayal tried to destroy me, but it only created a man who cannot be destroyed. Time has a way of healing wounds, not by erasing them, but by teaching you to live with the scars. For a long while, I believed love was something I could never trust again. That word love felt poisoned, a promise too fragile to ever hold real weight. But as the months passed, I realized that refusing love was the same as letting Lisa and Mark's betrayal win. They had already taken enough from me. I wasn't about to let them take my future too. It didn't happen suddenly. It began with small things. A smile from a stranger at the cafe I visited every morning. Light conversations with coworkers that reminded me connection wasn't always dangerous. And then, there was Anna. She wasn't someone I sought out. She was simply there. Genuine, kind, steady. She didn't try to force herself into my life. Instead, she became a presence that grew naturally, like sunlight through an open window. At first, I resisted. Every time my phone buzzed with her message, my chest tightened. Memories of Lisa's secret calls flashing through my mind. Every time Anna laughed at something I said, a quiet voice whispered, "Don't trust it, Ethan. Don't be fooled again." But Anna wasn't Lisa, and I wasn't the same man anymore. One evening, we sat across from each other at a small restaurant. The conversation was effortless, but my silence gave me away. She looked at me for a long moment before saying softly, "Whoever hurt you, left a mark that's still heavy on you, but I'm not them. I'm not here to take from you. I'm here to know you." Those words struck deeper than she knew. For the first time since my marriage crumbled, I felt the weight inside me ease. Trust wasn't something I could give blindly anymore, but maybe that wasn't weakness. Maybe it was strength. Because now, I knew the value of trust, and I would give it only to those who truly deserved it. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Anna never demanded more than I could give. She matched my pace, patient and steady, and with time, I realized something remarkable. I wasn't waiting for her to betray me. I was simply living in the moment, unafraid. She didn't fill the void Lisa left. She helped me see that there was no void to fill. I was whole already. Love was simply an addition, not a necessity. One night, standing on that same balcony where I once whispered to myself about survival, Anna joined me. The city stretched out before us, alive and glowing. She slipped her hand into mine, and instead of fear, I felt calm. Instead of suspicion, I felt trust. For the first time in years, I understood what love could mean when it was real, not an illusion, not a performance, but a choice, made every day with honesty and respect. I turned to her and said quietly, "I used to think betrayal broke me, but the truth is, it rebuilt me, and because of that, I can stand here with you now, unafraid." Anna smiled, and in that moment I knew, the past would always be a part of my story, but it no longer defined me. What defined me was strength, resilience, and the ability to open my heart again, carefully, but fully. Betrayal once taught me how fragile love could be, but Anna taught me something even greater. When love is real, it isn't fragile at all. Years have passed since the nights filled with lies, the evidence I meticulously gathered, and the confrontation that changed everything. Time, once my enemy, became my ally. The pain of betrayal, which once burned so brightly, has softened into a distant memory, a scar that reminds me not of weakness, but of survival and strength. I live now in a life built deliberately, piece by piece, a home filled with honesty, laughter, and warmth, not illusions or false security. Anna is by my side, and together we've cultivated something rare. Trust built not on naivety, but on choice, on respect, on knowing the value of it because we've both experienced the opposite. I often reflect on the man I once was, naive, trusting, willing to ignore warning signs because I believed in loyalty without question. That man had his world shattered in the most intimate way imaginable, but he also had the chance to rise from the rubble, stronger, sharper, unbroken. I sometimes think of Lisa and Mark, not with anger, but as reminders of the lessons they forced upon me: clarity, discernment, and the power of reclaiming one's own life. Freedom isn't just leaving someone who betrays you, it's reclaiming your narrative, your choices, and your peace. I've learned that revenge, in its raw form, is fleeting. True power comes from walking away unshaken, from building a life so resilient that no betrayal could ever threaten it again. Looking at my life now, I see more than recovery. I see growth, wisdom, and courage. I see a man who can love without fear, trust without blindness, and live fully without hesitation. The past is no longer a chain, it is the foundation upon which I stand. And sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I whisper to myself, not with bitterness, but with pride: betrayal tried to destroy me. It failed. I am whole. I am free. I am unbreakable. Because in the end, that's what it's all about: turning the deepest wounds into strength, and the darkest nights into the dawn of a life truly your own.